When I was 24, my girlfriend Lisa and I moved into a small rental house by the bay on the edge of a quiet coastal town. The place looked almost like a model from a real estate brochure. Narrow front porch, peeling white paint, a yard barely big enough for a grill and two lawn chairs, and beyond the fence you could see the gray stretch of water and a rusted pier. Neighbors drove the same trucks past our window every morning, and people waved from behind their windshields like they'd known us for years, even though we'd only been there for 3 days. We both worked remotely, so most days it was just the two of us and the sound of the wind coming off the water. Lisa would sit on the porch with her coffee at 7:30 sharp, scrolling through her phone, and I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop and pretend the creaks in the walls were just the house settling. It felt like the kind of town where nothing truly bad ever happened, where the worst thing you could imagine was a storm taking out the power for a night. That's probably why the first time I saw the old man at our fence, I told myself it was nothing. He was just standing there, one hand on the post, the other on a faded wooden cane, staring up at the second-floor windows like he was trying to read something written on the glass. I stepped outside and said, "Good morning," because that's what you do in towns like this. He didn't answer right away. His head turned slowly, like he'd just been shaken out of a deep daydream. And when his eyes finally met mine, they were a washed-out blue, almost colorless. He nodded once and said, "You're the new ones. Used to be quieter over here." Then he tapped the cane against the fence post and pointed across the road at a sagging house with a rotting porch and a boat trailer half buried in weeds. "I'm Walter. Been here longer than the road." I laughed politely because I didn't know what else to do, but something in my stomach pulled tight. Up close, he smelled faintly like engine oil and salt. There was an ancient portable radio sitting by his boot, one of those boxy things with a telescoping antenna, paint worn off the knobs from years of use. It hissed softly with static, even though nobody was touching it. Walter didn't seem interested in introductions beyond that. He just glanced at our front door, then at the upstairs window again, and said, "You two keep late hours. Light in that room was on past 1 the last couple nights." The way he said it was casual, like he was commenting on the weather, but my skin prickled. Lisa and I hadn't told anyone our schedule, and the bedroom curtains were always drawn. That night I tried to brush it off when I told Lisa. She shrugged and said, "He's probably lonely. Old guys and windows, that's their Netflix." We joked about it for a minute, but the joke didn't stick. When we went upstairs to bed, I found myself pausing in the dark hallway, staring at the thin rectangle of the bathroom window. It was one of those useless windows near the ceiling that barely opened, the kind you forget exists until you need to wipe condensation off it. I reached up and checked the latch twice, then a third time, even though it had been closed all day. The glass felt colder than the air in the hall, like somebody had their palm pressed against the other side just a second ago. 2 days later, I was taking the trash out when Walter appeared again, this time at the edge of our driveway. I hadn't seen him walk up. He was just suddenly there, radio hanging from his wrist by its cracked plastic handle, antenna pointing at the sky. "Your girlfriend leaves for work at 7:28, he said, not bothering with hello. "Coffee mug in her left hand, phone in the right. She always locks the door twice, but she only checks the handle once." I stared at him, trash bag dangling from my hand, waiting for him to laugh and say he was kidding. But he didn't. He just watched my face like he was waiting for me to confirm he was right. "You don't have to worry," he added after a beat, as if that helped. "The folks around here see everything." The first time I heard my own voice coming out of that radio, it was still dark outside. I'd gotten up just before dawn to get a glass of water and clear my head. Sleep hadn't been coming easily since Walter started cataloging our habits out loud. As I walked past the front door, a faint crackle drifted through it. Static, then a clipped syllable, then more static. I thought it was somebody's television left on too loud, until I heard my name in my own voice. I froze with my hand on the deadbolt. "Yeah, we finally made it," the voice said, slightly warped, like it had been recorded in a tunnel. "Little place by the bay, paint's peeling, but Lisa loves the porch." It was my tone, my cadence, a conversation I'd had on speakerphone with a friend the night we moved in, when we were still sitting on boxes and laughing about how the floor slanted toward the kitchen. I shouldn't have been able to hear that conversation again, not like this, not bleeding through static at 5 in the morning from the other side of my front door. I unlatched the door and opened it just enough to look out. The early light made everything flat and gray. Our porch was empty except for the same battered radio Walter always carried, now placed neatly beside the welcome mat. Its tiny red power light glowed, antenna fully extended, speaker grill hissing. As I watched, the recording of my voice cut off mid-sentence and was replaced by silence. And then, softly, like someone leaning too close to a microphone, a slow, deliberate breath that did not belong to me. I stared at the radio for a long time before I finally stepped outside. The air was heavy with dampness, the kind that soaks right into your clothes. I picked it up by its cracked handle. It was heavier than it looked, and the static didn't change as I lifted it, just kept that steady white noise hiss. There was no tape deck, no slot for a CD or SD card, just an AM/FM dial and a speaker grill clogged with dust. I turned it off, the click of the dial sounding impossibly loud in the quiet morning, and brought it inside. I didn't tell Lisa right away. I put it on the highest shelf in the hall closet, behind a stack of towels, and told myself I'd return it to Walton later. But every time I walked past that closet door, I could feel it sitting there in the dark, and part of me was terrified that if I listened closely enough, I'd still hear breathing. That evening, Lisa came home looking pale. She didn't say hello, just dropped her keys on the counter and stood there, rubbing her arms. "That old man across the street, Walter, he was standing by the mailbox when I pulled in." I stopped what I was doing. "Did he say anything to you?" She nodded, swallowing hard. "He asked if we liked the music last night, said the signal was clear." I felt the blood drain from my face. We hadn't played any music. We'd gone to bed early, exhausted from the move and the creeping tension. "Matt," she whispered, looking at me with wide, frightened eyes, "how did he know we were even awake?" I didn't return the radio. Instead, 2 nights later, I took it down from the shelf. Lisa was asleep, or pretending to be, and the house felt like it was holding its breath. I sat on the living room floor with the volume low and turned it on. Static filled the room, familiar and grating. I started turning the dial slowly, millimeter by millimeter, searching for anything, a station, a voice, a sign that this was just a piece of old junk and not something worse. At first, nothing, just the wash of white noise. Then, around 94.5, the hiss dipped and a voice cut through.
It wasn't a broadcast. It was Lisa. "Maybe we should just call the cops," her voice said, tinny and distorted but unmistakable. "He's just standing there, Matt. Look at him." My stomach dropped. She had said that exact sentence to me 3 hours ago, in the kitchen, while we were watching Walter from behind the blinds. The recording continued, capturing my response, the clink of silverware, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. It was a recording of our dinner, from inside the house. I stared at the radio, my hands trembling. There were no microphones in our kitchen, no wires running through the walls that we knew of. How was he doing this? I turned the dial further, more static, then another dip. This time, the sound was different, rhythmic, wet, heavy. It took me a moment to realize what it was. Sleeping. 2 people breathing in sync, the rustle of sheets, the soft tick of the bedside clock. It was a live feed of our bedroom, right now. I shut the radio off and shoved it under the couch cushions, heart hammering against my ribs. I ran upstairs, awakening Lisa, not caring if I scared her. We tore the room apart, checked the vents, the smoke detector, behind the mirror, under the mattress. Nothing. No bugs, no wires, no hidden cameras. Just the empty, silent room. But as we stood there in the wreckage of our own privacy, I looked out the window. Across the street, in the dark window of the sagging house, a single red light blinked. Once. Twice. Then went out. We called the police the next morning. 2 officers showed up, looking bored and tired, the kind of look reserved for city people who move to small towns and get spooked by the locals. I showed them the radio, played the snippets I could find again, though the signal was weaker now, fading in and out of the static. They listened, frowned, and exchanged a look. "It's interference," the older officer said, handing the radio back like it was a dirty tissue. "Old baby monitors, cordless phones, ham radios, signals bounce around out here. Doesn't mean he's bugging you." "He knew when we woke up," I argued, my voice rising. "He quoted conversations we had inside our own kitchen." The officer shrugged. "Walls are thin in these old places, son. Sound carries. Unless you find a device on your property or he threatens you directly, there's not much we can do. Maybe get some thicker curtains." They left without even knocking on Walter's door. That night, we didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat across my knees, watching the street. Lisa locked herself in the bedroom with a chair under the doorknob. Around 3 a.m., the motion sensor light on the garage flickered on. I was at the window in a second. The driveway was empty, but on the pavement, right where the light faded into darkness, sat another radio, identical to the first. I didn't go out to get it. I just watched it. And as I watched it, the antenna slowly, mechanically, began to extend on its own. It rose inch by inch, jerking upward like a stiff limb until it pointed straight at our living room window. Then the speaker flared to life, loud enough to penetrate the glass. "Some signals don't stop at the walls, Matt. Some signals come from the ground up." The next day, we packed. We didn't care about the lease, the deposit, or the view of the bay. We threw clothes into bags, left the furniture, left the dishes in the sink. As I was loading the last box into the trunk, I looked across the street. Walter's house was silent. The weeds in the yard were still. The boat trailer sat rusting in the sun. But the front door was wide open. I shouldn't have gone over there. I know that now. But anger and fear make you do stupid things. I told Lisa to wait in the car with the engine running, and I walked across the road. I stepped onto the rotting porch and called his name. No answer. The open door led into a hallway that smelled of mold and stagnant water. I took a step inside. The house was empty, not just uninhabited, empty. No furniture, no carpets, no pictures on the walls, just bare floorboards and dust. It looked like no one had lived there for decades. But in the center of the living room, arranged in a perfect circle, were dozens of radios, all different sizes, all different ages, some ancient wood-paneled consoles, some cheap plastic boomboxes, some sleek digital receivers. And in the middle of the circle, sitting on a single wooden chair, was a pair of headphones connected to nothing. I walked closer, the floorboards groaning under my weight. The radios were all on, but they weren't playing music. They were whispering. 1,000 tiny, tinny voices overlapping, weaving together into a chaotic hum. I leaned down to the nearest one. Checking the window again. Locks don't matter. Coffee at 7:32. Lisa's crying in the car. They were all us, every moment of our lives in that house, echoing back from 50 different speakers. And then, underneath it all, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. A rhythmic, wet thumping, like a heartbeat, but slow, much too slow for a human. And it was coming from under the floorboards beneath the chair. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was in the car and we were peeling out of the driveway. We drove for 3 hours before we even spoke.